It is day 18 of our garden study, and I'm going to show you a picture. What do you see? What insects do you see in this flower garden? What do you see on the picture over here? Yes, you can see a butterfly and a bee. Now, we are talking about pollen. So I'm going to show you some other pictures here. So here we have some pollen. I'm going to put the words up here. Pollen, and pollinating or pollinizando. So here we have some flowers that you can see if you look at the sunflower, the very center, not the very center, but the kind of the outside portion of the middle is where the pollen is. Then if you look at these lilies, see these little tiny yellow things, those are the pollen. And if you look at the daisy, all of that yellow center is pollen. And again, with the chrysanthemums, is the very tiny center is yellow. Now, pollen is the yellow powder that found in flowers that causes them to make seeds that can grow into new flowers, fruits, and vegetables. Pollen has to move from one flower to another to do its job. And that's where the bees and the birds and butterflies come into play. So they land on the flower and they get it on their legs, and then they fly. When they're done, they fly over to another flower, and then it transfers the pollen to the next flower. So that is how that works. So if you were to take some flour and a piece of felt fabric and pretend your hand was a bee, and you put your hand down into the cornstarch or the flour, so like put your hand down in there, and then land on and pretend that the piece of felt is the flour. Land on the felt. Put your hand on the felt. It will transfer to the felt. That's essentially the same thing that a bee does. They land in the pollen, and then they go to the flower, and it transfers. Okay, so if you have those materials home, flour, cornstarch, and a piece of felt material, try that, and you can see how it transfers. Okay, so I have a book that kind of gives us some more facts about pollination. It says what lily gets from bee and other pollination facts. As you can see, the bumblebee here, or the bee, is going to get some pollen. So let's find out the story. So it says, it is a sunny morning. Pink, yellow, and orange lily flowers are growing in a garden. Summer is the time of year when lilies make seeds, but they need help. Who do you think helps them? Yes, luckily, a small helper arrives. A honeybee lands on one of the lily flowers and crawls inside. As you can see, all the pretty lilies. Why do you think the honeybee is visiting the lily flower? You can see these parts right here, like we saw in our picture of the lily, is where the pollen is. A seed is a part of a flower that can grow into a new plant. Each flower on a lily plant makes hundreds of seeds. So one example, a good way to see a plant that you can see all of the seeds that a plant makes is a sunflower. Because once the sunflower is done for this season, you will see the entire middle portion of the sunflower is seeds. So a sunflower is a good way to see that in action. So if you get a chance to grow a sunflower, wait till it's done at the end of the season, like in the fall, and you will see all of the seeds in the middle, and then you can plant those seeds for flowers again. A sweet treat for honeybee. Inside the lily, the bee drinks nectar. It is a sweet liquid that flowers make. Lilies also make a colored dust called pollen. Pollen comes from a part of the flower called the anthers. So these parts right here, these are called the anthers. As the bee looks for nectar inside the flower, some pollen sticks to its furry body on its legs. What do you think the honeybee will do when it has finished drinking nectar from the lily flower? Let's read and find out. Honeybees carry some of the nectar they drink back to their hive. There they turn the nectar into honey. They eat the honey in winter when there are no flowers around. So they store it up for winter. They save it. Good idea. All right, pollen on the move. And here's what we were talking about. When the bee has finished drinking, it flies to a different flower and crawls inside. The pollen is still stuck to its body. As the bee looks for more nectar, some pollen brushes off its body. It sticks to a part of the lily called the stigma. The little bee doesn't know it, but it has just helped the lily make seeds. A honeybee may be inside a flower for only a few seconds. Try to guess how many flowers a honeybee might visit in one day. How many do you think? Wow. Let's find out. Many flowers get honeybees to visit them by giving off a sweet smell. That's why when you pick flowers, you often want to smell them. Well, the bees can smell that too. The smell is a sign that to the bees that there is nectar inside the flowers. As you can see here on this little bee, the nectar or the pollen stuck to it. I thought we were supposed to get the answer. Turn the page to find the answer. Interesting. No answer. Okay, maybe it's at the end of the book. We'll find out. Spreading pollen from the anthers is of one flower to the stigma of another is called pollination or pollinizado. Honeybees are great pollinators. When they visit a flower to drink nectar, pollen sticks to their bodies. Then they spread the pollen as they fly from flower to get more nectar. Oh, here's our answer. A honeybee may visit about 2,000 different flowers in one day. 2,000 flowers. That is a lot of flowers. Here it says, draw a picture of a lily flower on a piece of paper. Then add these labels to your drawing. The anther, pollen, and stigma. You can look back through this book to make sure you put the labels in the correct places. If you draw this picture, I would love to see it. You can put it in the comments below. All right, here's a close-up. An anther with the pollen, and then pollen stuck to a honeybee. Look at all of that pollen. Honeybees carry some pollen back to their hives. There the bees make it into food for feeding baby bees. Did you know there were baby bees? Yes. All right, inside the lily, some of the pollen left behind by the bee begins the process of making seeds. The seeds grow inside a case that protects them. The case is called a seed pod. By the fall, the seeds are fully grown. The lily flower dies and the seed pods split open. The seeds fall to the ground, ready to grow into new lily plants in the spring. Look, inside the seed pods, look at all those seeds. Most flowers need pollen from another flower to make seeds. Some flowers, such as dandelions and those in tomato plants, can use their own pollen to pollinate themselves. That's probably why dandelions just grow anywhere. In there you can see the seed pod and the seeds and then the new lily plant. Insect pollinators. Bees do more than just help lilies make seeds. They also pollinate apple blossoms, roses, daisies, and many other types of flowers. Bees aren't the only kind of insect that can pollinate flowers. However, butterflies, moths, beetles, and many other insects also do this important job. They move from flower to flower, drinking nectar and spreading pollen. So as you can see here, the honeybee and the apple blossom that will later turn into an apple. In order for a lily to be pollinated, it needs pollen from another lily. Pollen from a rose or daisy won't help the lily flower make seeds. Okay. Hummingbird pollinators. Insects aren't the only kind of animal that can pollinate flowers. A tiny ruby-throated hummingbird visits flowers to lap up nectar with its long tongue. While feeding, the bird hovers in the air by flapping its wings about 50 times in 1 second. Pollen from the flower's anthers sticks to the bird's wings. The bird then spreads the pollen to other flowers it visits. Some plants don't need animal pollinators. Instead, they are pollinated by the wind. Their pollen is blown from one flower to another. And there's that little hummingbird, the ruby-throated hummingbird. And here's the anthers, and there's the stigma. A flower in this picture is called a hibiscus. Beautiful, beautiful flowers. Try to describe the ways in which a hibiscus and a lily flower are the same and different. So we talked about a bee pollinating the lily flower, where the hibiscus can be pollinated just by the wind blowing the pollen. And bats can pollinate too. Some types of bats visit flowers to eat pollen and drink nectar. These small animals pick up pollen on their fur and spread it as they fly from flower to flower. The bats visit plants that produce fruits, such as mangoes, figs, and peaches. After the bats pollinate the flowers, the plants grow their seeds inside the fruit. In New Zealand, a type of lizard called a gecko climbs trees called pahutakawas to drink nectar and eat pollen from the trees. Fluffy red flowers. The gecko carries the pollen from flower to flower on its skin. Pahutakawa. What a name for a flower. Oh, there's the bat. It's eating some nectar from the flower. And it says it's teamwork. When bees or other pollinators visit flowers, two very important things happen. First, the animals get the food they need from the flowers. Second, the flowers are pollinated by the animals and can make seeds. When honeybees and lilies come together, they make a great team. Bees pollinate apple blossoms. Then the blossoms make seeds which grow inside the apples that people like to eat. Without bees, there would be no seeds and no apples. So this is a diagram. In the summer, a lily plant grows flowers. A bee visits the lily flower to drink its nectar. Pollen from the lily's anthers sticks to the bee. Then the bee flies to another lily. Some pollen on the bee's body sticks to its flower. This flower's stigma. The flower uses pollen carried by the bees to make seeds, and the seeds drop to the ground in the fall, and then the seeds grow into a new lily plant in the spring. So that's the cycle. All right, it says Science Lab. Watch bees and other pollinators in action by growing some cosmos flowers for them to visit. Here are some things to do when your flowers are fully grown. Look for pollen in the yellow center. So here's that pollen. Keep a diary of the insects you see visiting the flowers. Watch for seeds forming in the centers of the flowers. Collect the seeds in an envelope, and next spring plant the seeds and grow more cosmos flowers. Okay, so that's something you can do at home. Seeds are not too expensive. You can get them. These are called cosmos. A very pretty flower. You can grow them and then harvest the seeds and then grow more next year. And those are the science words that we learned. And that is the end of our book. I hope you enjoyed today's study. It was a little bit long, but I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Learning about pollination is so important and fascinating. So don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button below, and I will see you on the next video.